All right. Today we're diving into a really unique worldview. It's one where the presidency isn't about power at all, where a whole nation's destiny is to literally become a star, and where it all builds up to a pretty startling prophecy about the future. So let's get right into it. So, we're going to kick things off with this statement from our source material, and it's a real head scratcher. I mean, we all think of the presidency as the ultimate seat of authority, right? Well, this idea just completely flips that on its head and makes you ask a pretty big question. Exactly. If it's not about power, what is it about? Let's unpack this, because, according to the source, we've been fundamentally misunderstanding what the president's role is supposed to be. It's not about giving orders or being in command. It's actually something way more unexpected. Get this. According to this philosophy, the presidency is actually the world's most intense and exclusive educational program. Yeah, you heard that right. Think of it like a 5-year university course, but with only one student, and that student is representing an entire country. So the idea here is that the nation isn't selecting a ruler, it's choosing a representative, a student. The whole 5-year term is seen as this curriculum designed to give them a global perspective. But the real subject of study? It's the president themselves. The goal isn't to rule, it's to grow. And when you look at it this way, every part of the presidency, getting elected, meeting world leaders, all of it, it's just reframed as part of this education. The country's resources aren't for wielding power, they're the scholarship fund for this one student. And the final exam? It's not about getting reelected. It's about graduating as a totally transformed world leader. Okay, but here's the twist. According to the source, even with this whole elaborate educational system in place, the program has a 0% graduation rate. It claims that no one has ever actually completed the course successfully. And that right there is the central puzzle of this whole worldview. If the presidency is a school, why has every single student failed? Well, the source argues it's because the school has always been missing one critical thing. And that missing piece is the teacher. Now, according to this philosophy, we're not just talking about an advisor or a mentor here. This is a very specific, almost mystical role that is absolutely essential to the whole process. The source says this teacher, or sisung, which is a much heavier word, kind of like a true master or guru, only shows up at the very end. They appear when the student has already learned everything they need to learn. Their job isn't to teach more facts. It's to give them the final key that unlocks the wisdom inside all that knowledge. And that is the core distinction here. See, knowledge is just information, right? It's stuff you've collected. But wisdom is knowing how to use it, how to make it shine. Without this teacher, the president is like a student who's memorized the entire textbook, cover to cover, but has no idea how to apply any of it in the real world. Now, this whole idea of shining isn't just for one person, for the president. It actually scales up to become the prophesied destiny for the entire Korean people. They're presented as this nation with immense but currently sleeping potential. The source uses this specific term, chonsin, or heavenly descendants, to describe them. And the idea is that these people already possess all the ingredients for greatness. The skills, the power, the knowledge, but they're just missing that final spark. That spark of wisdom. And the source uses a really powerful metaphor to explain this. Right now, the Korean people are like planets. They have mass, they have substance, knowledge, skill, but just like a planet, they can only reflect light from other sources. They can't create their own. Their destiny, according to this prophecy, is to actually transform into stars, to generate their own light of wisdom for the rest of the world to see. And yeah, the source uses some incredibly blunt language here to really drive the point home. The choice is stark: become a beacon for all of humanity, or, something much, much less noble. It's framed as this urgent national calling that has to be answered. So the big question is, how does this transformation from a planet to a star actually happen? The source explains it through this really fascinating comparison between two groups who are described as brothers that were each put on a very different path by a higher power. Okay, so this table really lays out the worldview pretty clearly. It suggests that the Chensan were gifted the DNA for wisdom, and their role was to become the world's spiritual guides. In contrast, it says the Jewish people were gifted this talent for math and economics to build up the world's material and technological foundation. The paths are totally different, but as you'll see, they're meant to be complementary. So why the different paths? Well, according to the source, the hardship was actually a necessary ingredient. It kept the Chunsan focused on what it claims is their true purpose, the hunt for wisdom. The argument is that if they'd been given great wealth, it would have been a fatal distraction from that spiritual goal. And this entire philosophy, this whole worldview, it all culminates in one final prophetic vision for the future. A future where these two separate paths finally converge. And they do it right on the Korean peninsula. The prophecy kicks off with a choice. The Chonsan have to shift their entire focus away from personal gain and instead turn towards serving all of humanity. This is the catalyst. This is what sets everything else in motion. And as soon as that selfless choice is made, the prophecy begins to unfold. That missing teacher finally appears, the lock on their collective wisdom is broken, and the nation finally ignites, fulfilling its destiny and becoming that shining star. And you better believe that this new shining light is not going to go unnoticed. The source predicts it's going to act like this irresistible beacon, pulling in people, ideas, and resources from all corners of the globe. And this is where it all comes together. Those two paths we talked about, they finally merge. The Jewish people, who spent centuries developing the world's material wealth, are prophesied to bring all of that wealth to the Chonsan, who have finally mastered spiritual wisdom. And this grand convergence is prophesied to happen in one specific place. The source calls the Korean peninsula a new Eden, a physical location supposedly prepared by heaven itself to become the new global center for both spiritual wisdom and material prosperity. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. It's a complex, and for many, a very different way of looking at the world, one that challenges our usual ideas of power and national destiny. And it leaves us with this final thought. In a world that's so focused on things like GDP and military strength, what does it really mean for a country to shine? That's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for watching.